Give you enough money to let us come in there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays, that's a overtime charge too. So you got Saturday, Sunday, holidays, and nights that these people are gonna have to pay additional cost because they happen to stop up at the wrong time. They don't choose these times. It's
Mr.
just the
Cheney.
nature of the business.
So, Mr. Cheney, we are undergoing a rate study so that we are going to look at all of our rates. And that will certainly be something we will look at.
Ma'am, I'm really having hard time understanding you.
Okay.
I read lips better than I hear.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if somebody can
Okay.
help me out with what she said, don't laugh.
Okay,
Of what you're trying to say, I'm having trouble hearing you.
okay. Let me, Ms. Campbell has her light on. Ms. Campbell?
So she was saying that we're studying all of our rates right now. And so I'm sure this is something that we'll look at. I had a couple of questions. What's the average, what are we talking about? And this is more a question for Randy Sears. Mr. Sears, is this an often occurring thing, or is it a seldom occurring thing? Do the majority of our...
Mr. Cheney?
Do the majority of the people bringing the sewage come during the normal hours, and this is,
It is an abnormal thing for after hours, weekends, holidays, that sort of thing. Right now, we're averaging about 147 trucks a week. 3 or 4 of those each week might be in the after hours category.
okay, so do you feel, and I'm just trying to get staff's thoughts on it, do you think that if we opened it up, if it was the same amount, then more people would come after hours? I think I'm leaning towards what Bruce was saying, is maybe we change the hours, not change the...
There is that opportunity. There's no real way to know. I would guess that yes, we would have more vehicles later. The problem at Central is that we run a skeleton crew starting at 5:30 in the afternoon. So there will either be 3 or 4 operators there all night long who are required to pull compliance samples, to pull flow meters, to do everything required in our operating permit. And when a truck comes in after hours, we need to move that individual to septic receiving.
So 3 or 4 trucks a week come in.
Mm-hmm.
So how long does it take to, I'm getting somewhere, trust me. How long does it take for your operator to go and assist that truck with that job?
Between 15 and 20 minutes, if I had to guess.
15, 20 minutes?
Mhm.
So an hour a week?
Yes, ma'am.
Hour a week. Well, what's the average amount of, that's in one of these trucks?
I think that the last time I did it was about 2,800 gallons on average.
So about 3,000. Good job, Mr. Cheney, you said 3,000. So 3,000 is $121.
3,000 would be 360.
I mean, 360.
$363.
Yeah,
3,000
363.
gallons right now,
All right.
daytime costs
Mr.
us
Cheney,
$255.
Okay. $363
And 50 cents, I think.
times 4. $1,600 almost. $1,500 basically. Okay. And it's taken us 4 hours a week. Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Woody? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought your light was off. Okay, Mr. Woody, if you want to.
Randy, before you sit down, could you talk briefly about the staffing implications of having enough business after hours to warrant having to bring in a person to attend specifically just the septic station?
So there's where the issue falls, is right now we either have 3 or 4 individuals there overnight. They each have compliance metrics that they must meet. So they're out, they're doing field tests, they're pulling water quality samples, they're pulling flow meters. If one of those operators gets pulled away to handle a septic truck coming in after hours, they cannot be doing that FDEP required sampling event, or totalizer as we call them, or something along those lines. So there is an opportunity to miss something in our operating permit if that were the case. That's going to be the biggest issue. So if we have one truck a night come in, we can manage with the staff we have there and we adjust accordingly. If we were to get 5, 6, 7 trucks in a night, all of a sudden, that's a lot of time for one of those operators that we would have to cover in some other fashion.
No, Mr. Cheney, no, you're not recognized. So just wait. I'll call on you again. Mr. Williams.
Yeah, Randy's point was the one that I was wanting to illustrate.
Okay.
And that is that although finding an alternative way to come up with some additional revenue is appreciated by Mr. Cheney's suggestion, the reality is a shift in the number of folks, we wouldn't anticipate that we would get more business in terms of the frequency of trucks, but they would be arriving at different times, and because there would be more frequent arrivals after 5 o'clock, we would require a staff to staff that position. And that generates a great amount of additional expense, more than a penny a gallon would recover.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Mr. Williams.
Yes, my concern was similarly addressed but I have a concern for Mr. Cheney too, and that is that he's going to charge the customer whatever is required to pay. So somehow, I understand employees after hours and the constraints you have with meeting your metrics. So can we go a little deeper on our numbers and say, are there no trucks coming in between 7 and 9 in the morning? Are they coming in between the hours of 10 and 3? Or can we be a little more specific? And can we raise the price during the day hours to compensate for, or still make it an incentive for them to come in the day, but reduce some of that cost in the evening, particularly when your sewer goes out? There's nothing you can do but call a plumber, and only thing you want done is to have your problem fixed. And so if I'm going to pass that cost on to the consumer, then the consumer is the one who's going to suffer the most. But it has to be, I understand business, and it has to be a good business decision on our part. So I'm trying to figure out how can we move hours, like your suggestion, or how can we raise prices to where the after hours people, when it is really a unfortunate incident that they can't control, not be charged so much. So I think that's a follow-up to this discussion, but those are the variables that I would like to see us bring some attention to as well. And I think that's what Ms. Campbell was trying to drive at. So if we could just...
Now, there are several slack periods, I guess you would call them. Middle of the morning and middle of the afternoon. Our big times are usually first thing in the morning, right at lunchtime, and then right before 5 o'clock as well. So sliding them is really not going to help a whole lot. Now, when it comes to the after-hours emergencies, that's something that we at ECUA tried to address when we took over from the third-party consultant, because they did not have night hours. They did not have hours on Sunday. The gates were actually physically locked. So by having us available in case of emergency, we're putting ourselves out there to say, yes, we are here for you.
So that's an improvement. Is that an improvement from, 5 years ago?
No, that is an improvement. We took over in 2012. April 20th, 2012 is when we took over from the third party. And prior to that, they were only doing 6 days a week during the day.
So to be available on emergency cases is an improvement from 2012 forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good deal, good. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams.
Make sure Mr. Cheney understands what you just said. I'm sure he knows, but that the services that are now available on an emergency basis weren't always available. I know he knows that, so we've tried and we're trying to work with the customer as well as the business person.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Good points. Mr. Stevens?
So like I said, just to follow up, I think Mr. Cheney's suggestion was, and again, this is something beyond this discussion and beyond this meeting is, and I think Chairwoman Benson had alluded to the fact we're going to be looking at rates and studying rates going forward, and of course, this will probably come up for that discussion. If we could spread the cost throughout the entire day, would that offset, for example, one extra person? If you're using your metric of 15 minutes on average per truck coming in to do the sampling, based on, I don't know, 3 trucks a night, 4 trucks a night, possibly one additional person. You're saying, Director Woody, I think 50,000 a year, ballpark. Would adding that 1 to 2 cents, and I'm not putting a second cent, 2 cents on your company, Mr. Channing, but 1 to 2 cents spread out over the cumulative of that day, would that offset? I know I don't have a calculator in front of me, but would that offset that? I think what you're trying to say, Mr. Cheney, is you want to be equitable with everyone, the sewer companies and the sewer customers and the septic customers, to say, look, if a septic customer has an issue after hours, he or she's paying additional money because we, ECUA, are charging you, the contractor, additional money as opposed to the plumber. You're getting the after-hour service call regardless. To your point about would it increase the frequency, I would guess to say somewhat, but would it be substantially? I'm just thinking overtime hours. And so if we're looking for a deterrent for septic companies to not take advantage of the situation, and you got 10 more trucks showing up at midnight, I think what CDL drivers make times time and a half is going to discourage all the companies from making sure that driver is done as much as he or she can, by 5 o'clock. So again, this was all about just being equitable with sewer customers, septic customers, and seeing if there's any way we could reduce the expense to the consumer. This isn't about the septic companies, to the consumer for that emergency time, because again, I'd like to be cognizant of the fact that when that call is being made after 5 o'clock, that's not something a board member, Mr. Williams pointed out, that's an emergency situation. That's something that you've got to have that done right then and there. And so again, I just want to be cognizant of that as well. So,
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Ms. Campbell?
Well, can you hear, can you see me? So the truth of the matter is, I know a lot of people work 8 to 5, but I happen to own a company and the people work all kind of hours. I look down sometimes and I got this lady, I don't know what her deal is, but at 10:30 at night, she's popping off questions to me and I'm thinking, does she really think I might answer this? No, she really don't think I might answer this. She knows it's going to be tomorrow, but she's asking these questions because she's working at 10:30 at night. People work around the clock. They work different hours. They work all the time. I mean, and it's not uncommon that people are working from home. I have 80 employees, and 4 of them live in my office. The other 4, they don't use my bathroom. They use their bathroom. So I understand our world has changed, and it's even changing a lot more right now. So this is a very interesting conversation, and I think it's more about the time that people are having emergencies than it is about anything. And I don't think that we can determine what time people are having emergencies. And just because I'm sleeping doesn't mean the rest of the world is sleeping, So I like what Ms. Benson said. We're looking at the rates, and this is something I want us to take a lot of consideration into. I like what Mr. Stevens said, that maybe one person that worked, that did this, and then spread that fee out. Like you said, spread the fee out a little bit, maybe a little bit more during those non-peak hours that maybe y'all can do some kind of analyzing and figure out the real non-peak hours, This is a very interesting conversation. I'm a researcher, so right now I don't have an answer, but I'm open to listen to what everybody's saying but I just wanted to throw that in, that our hours may not be everybody's hours. And so I don't want someone to pay extra, a consumer to pay extra just because their toilet backs up when they're working at 10:30. And, I'm thinking about my people that are working at 10:30. I don't want them to pay more than me just because they're working a different hour. And I think there's a lot of that working different hours going on now. So it's a very interesting conversation. And I would say one thing, the ECUA is not trying to penalize anyone. This group of body of folks,
I'm not saying-
we're very leery of the consumer, and we really always look out for the consumer. So I hear what you're saying. I agree with what Ms. Benson says, that we're going to be looking at all our rates, and I appreciate you bringing this to us.
We have a lot of people in this county
Address her. Thank you.
that cannot afford what we charge now. To raise it is hurting them. I would love to take my people and tell them, go home at 5 o'clock, I'll see you at 7 in the morning, and don't make my phone ring again tonight.
Don't tell my
That's not the
people
li-
that.
That's not the life we live. We go to work when we have to go to work. And to tell a customer, I've got to charge you this extra money because the ECUA won't let me in because for some reason they can't manage it.
Thank
I
we-
did not hear the answer a while ago. How long does it take you to unload a truck?
Okay, Mr. Cheney.
Mr. Cheney,
thank you.
please address her.
Okay.
How long did it take to unload a
Okay,
truck?
we hear you. We hear you. Right now, the board is going to have discussion, and if we ask you a question, we will ask you the question. So, if I might weigh in, my air conditioner happens to know when it's a weekend, because that's when it decides to break. I don't know how it knows that, but it has never broken on a weekday. And I also know that I'm going to be paying twice as much to call somebody out. Sometimes I decide to be hot all weekend because I don't want to pay it. But I also know that the air conditioner company is paying somebody overtime to work all weekend so that I might be cool when I'm not. So I, as a consumer, understand that. I also know that as board members, our greatest policy tool happens to be in rates. If we say we're going to have across-the-board rates all the same, or 15 hours a day the same, what's going to happen is the workload is going to be spread over 15 hours, and all of our ratepayers are going to be paying a higher rate because we're going to have more people there managing that. I think that what we did in 2012 by accepting after hours was to do something for the consumers, to make it better. I hear what he said because, as I say, my air conditioner only breaks on weekends, and if I had a septic tank, it would only overflow on weekends. It's just my kind of luck. And I don't want to pay those rates, but we have to think of the overall thing and how to manage the resources that we have and make it affordable for everybody who needs our service. I think by looking at the rates overall, we will get a better picture of it. I think Mr. Woody, Mr. Sears, all hear what Mr. Cheney is saying, and that we would like to be responsive, but we also have to look at the overall work schedule and all of the people who pay our rates. And I don't want to do anything right now until we have completely visited this issue. Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Well, I appreciate discussion. I have some questions. How much profit are we making on our septic, facility? How much on the septic process? What's our profit margin there?
Mr. Woody, you want to respond?
Or do we have that available?
That's not a figure I'd be able to tell you. I can tell you what we bring in revenue. I can't tell you what that is in terms of profit, though. And even use of that word, I certainly want to qualify that as well. As the Chairman said so eloquently, there seems to be two issues here. One is service, and the other is cost. In terms of service, back in 2012, when we went providing the service 24/7, I think that was a wonderful gesture on behalf of our customers to be available because emergencies happen when emergencies happen. And we're going to provide that service 24/7. However, cost, we are public utility. We are owned by the public and managed by an elected board. We don't pay dividends to investors. We instead pay dividends back to our own customers by trying to run the most efficient operation that we can and keeping our rates as low as we can. So this notion of trying to set a rate that makes us as efficient and keeps our costs as low as possible is ultimately our goal. Whether that, if we, so that's something that needs to be studied. I had suggested and recommended a cost of service based rate study to make sure that each of our cost centers brings in enough money to pay for itself, but not overly so, not to make a profit per se, but certainly to cover costs, so those are extra expenses aren't borne by somebody other than the person who's receiving the benefit. So I would recommend that if we can give it the time, that we go through that exercise to bring a recommendation to you about the most efficient rate schedule that we think we can offer.
So profit was probably the wrong word there. So what I basically wanted to know is that service paying for itself? Are we subsidizing it with the larger rates, or do we even know that?
We don't know for sure, but given, I'm sorry.
You're recognized, sir.
We don't know for sure, but given that the rate was set in 2012, I think we moved away from wherever we were and probably are not covering expenses as well as we had been.
Well, and I think that's knowledge that we need. We need a lot more data than what we have. That's knowledge that we need to have. We need to be fair to all our ratepayers, the septage people, make sure they're not overpaying, and to our broader population of ratepayers, make sure they're not subsidizing. So I think that's data that we need. Usage data, it sounds like there's no real way to just move the hours. It sounds like if you can't really have split shifts or anything like that, you have to have somebody there. You don't know when it's going to happen, but if there were a way to adjust that, it would be nice to know. I sent an email earlier this month to Mr. Woody. I had a man in my district that's in his 90s, and his sewer and his ECUA bill's gotten up to about $90 a month. He's on Social Security, retired. The taxes go up on. We're not like, with the county and the city, as these property values keep going up, the tax rolls go up, so they have a lot more money without having to raise rates. And you used to be able to buy a house in my district, 20 years ago in East Hill or East Pensacola Heights for $40,000. Now they're $400,000. So they've gone up tenfold. Our rates haven't gone up tenfold, but the property values have, and so they have all that extra money. We have to keep up with rates and inflation and gas and insurance and all that by raising rates. I'd be interested in seeing, how the county property tax revenues compare to our rate increase revenues over the year. I think would be quite favorably. I think we're probably way below them. But the truth is that for any service we provide, they have to be paid for with rates. There's no other way to pay for it. It has to be paid for if it's done. And so this 91-year-old man calls me and he's like, look, I am having difficulty. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pay this rate. I don't want my water cut off. I have to have sewage, but I'm in a real bind here. I've got a problem. So I set him up with staff. We've got the EUAP program and some other things, and I think he's going to survive okay. But that's the stress that he's under with rates. And so I am a little bit hard pressed to say, hey, we're going to take somebody who has an after hours emergency, and it is emergency when your septic is failing and you've got sewage coming up. I've had roots in my lines at my house, and I know what that's like. You've got to get that taken care of right then and there. And it's the same with me. Anytime I've ever had anything like that, whether it's the air conditioning, rotor root, or anything like that, it's always after hours or on the weekend. Of course, I'm at work all the time during the day, so I wouldn't be there to discover it anyways, but it's always after hour on the weekend. I always have to pay a premium for it. And I just either accept it or wait till the morning. I just know that that's the way it is. But I am sympathetic to what Mr. Shaney's going through, and I would like to see if there's any way we can help them. And that might involve, staff, Mr. Shaney and Mr. Stevens getting together and looking at what would it cost us per gallon, figuring out what would it cost per gallon to have that extra person out there where we could have the hours open. And is that something that you're willing to pay? So do that research and find that number, and see if that's something that we're willing to pay. And or are there hours, we had talked about, I know a lot of times just a couple of extra hours, you get that daylight, you're trying to get all the work you can in during daylight and everything, and 7 to 7, just a couple of extra hours might give them some relief. It might not. I'm not in the business, but we could sit down with them, and that might be something we could do without a whole lot of difficulty. I'm not sure, because he says 5:30, all the other staff go home. But I would like to continue the discussions with them to see if there's any ways that we can help them without without being unfair to our other ratepayers and making them subsidize a service that somebody else is having during an emergency. And so I'd like to see us continue to work on it, not just say we're not going to do anything or we'll look at it, but keep Mr. Cheney involved. Mr. Stevens obviously has a good relationship, and our staff, and really crunch numbers and see what it would take to be able to help them. But as far as doing anything right now without those numbers and without really knowing what it would cost them, what it would cost the people who are getting their tanks pumped out, what it would cost the rest of the ratepayers, I'd be hard pressed to make a decision on it today. I think we need more information and try to work together and maybe have something worked out that we can bring to the board that everybody can agree on and that we can try and support.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Stevens?
So not to belabor the point, and first of all, thank you for that, Mr. Perkins. So I don't think Mr. Cheney was expecting anything to get resolved today, as opposed to just opening up the discussion and looking at the rates. I did want to point out something and make sure I'm understanding correctly. I think Mr. Cheney's proposal was to increase, or a proposal to increase a cent or two for everyone. And when he says everyone, he's meaning like septic and plumbing companies. So I don't think he's proposing to increase the average consumer's rates. I wanted to be clear.
Yeah,
Everybody's saying we're going to raise everybody's rates for the septic companies. That you're actually the septic
And I
companies are
think
actually
that's a great idea. If we get a number we can agree on, I think that's the solution. He's got the solution if we can just get to the number.
Right. And I just wanted to point that out, because when I'm hearing and maybe I'm not understanding it, but it sounds like we've got people saying that we're going to raise everybody's rates to pay for the septic companies after hours, when the septic companies are saying we don't mind paying the additional fee, so they're going to absorb it, not the consumer, but our rate payers are going to be the beneficiary of that. So it's almost like a win-win. So we're ECUA, in theory, we don't have the numbers, Mr. Cheney. In theory, would increase our revenue to offset potentially the cost of a new employee, and the ratepayer would benefit from a smaller after-hours emergency or service call. So I think that's what we were, like I said, we were getting at. That again, I understand we don't have all the numbers, and we're going to have to discuss this and so forth. But I did want to reiterate that point, that it's the septic plumbing companies are proposing to have an increase only on them to offset the after-hours cost.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
all.
Stevens. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you. I have an employee that also read lips. So I totally agree with what Dale said. And I think you're right. We've got to get, and I like what you said about the penny or so more. I don't know what that amount is, and that's what we have to figure out, is what that amount is overall to offset
Yes, ma'am.
and make these, make it where we can be available 24/7, but we aren't making a profit, but we're holding our own and not costing. Because anytime we cost money to the ECUA, it's costing money to all of our consumers. So I don't want to cost all the consumers. I just want to cost the ones that are using the service here, but I want it to, to make good sense. Does that make sense? I want it to equal out. So I think we're not done looking at numbers yet. So as soon as we look at those numbers, we'll come up with a figure. But I like that you're willing to work with us, and thank you for bringing this to our attention. And thank you to Mr. Stevens, who I think also owns a septic company or sewer company. And so he knows about this. I don't, so.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
you.
And I think we all look forward, just a moment, to our rate study. But the rate study is nuanced. It's not just an XYZ thing. For example, if we expand our hours, then we'll have more people coming in after hours. They want to miss rush hour traffic. Then we have to have 2 more people there. I mean, it's a complex system. And ultimately, we are answerable, first of all, to the ratepayers, because they're the ones paying the salaries to those people. So, ideally, everybody's emergency will come in before 5. When it doesn't, there are things that we have provided for, and we will look at that and try to be as fair as possible. Mr. Cheney, you wanted to be recognized one more time?
You want to interpret that?
You're recognized.
Mr. Perkins asked Mr. Woody what it costs to treat a gallon of septic waste. I may have not heard him if he said it, but did you ever give a price of what it costs to treat 1 gallon per gallon of septic waste?
I didn't understand the question in that form, so no, I did not reply to that. I don't, off the top of my head, I couldn't give you that figure.
We don't
Randy
know what
might
it's
actually
costing.
give you an idea.
Are you saying we don't know what it really costs to treat 1 gallon?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head, no.
I think it'd be good if we started there and then figure out what we got to charge, charge it to all people that we pump a tank for, regardless of time of day. Now, I'd love to go home at 5 o'clock. It just don't happen a lot. So it's the service we're all in. We're here to serve the people. And like I said, the people of Escambia County has been good to me for 47 years. I'm not here for me. You can raise it anything you want to. It ain't going to affect me at all because they're going to pay it. We have to. We ain't got no choice. It's the people I'm worried about. I see these people without a lot of money, and a lot of times we'll hold it down all we can. But this county is not the richest county in the world. So these are the people that keep us going, though. We elected to serve them, so I think we got to do that.
Thank-
Am I out of my tree? Am I doing this wrong?
Thank you. Mr. Cheney, we get that. Trust me. We hear from all of those people. Ms.
Okay,
Campbell.
That's all I
I'm
got to
good.
say. If y'all through, I'm going to work.
Ms. Campbell, you're
We
recognized.
appreciate y'all.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll hear, when will we have our rate study, Mr. Woody? I know it's very complicated. There are lots of rates to look at.
It will not be in time for the decisions we have for this next budget, probably. Our organization has not gone through a full cost of service rate study before. It will take some time to set up. It'll be easier once we get into a cycle of doing it on a regular basis, but.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that initiative. That's important to all of us. Mr. Perkins?
And Madam Chairman, for this particular issue, I don't think we have to wait till we have a comprehensive rate study. I mean, we could look at the revenues we bring in and calculate all the operating costs that go on with that entity, and I think come to some sort of number prior to that, and then look at what additional cost it would take to add another person to be there, and basically break that out on a per gallon basis and tell them what it's going to cost. You know, this guy came here to us not only with a problem, but with a solution. Now, the solution may not be the 1 penny that he thinks it is, but he's got a solution. If we can figure out what that cost is and give him that option, I think that would be providing a service that they might take advantage of.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Woody, he's suggesting faster action. You're recognized.
Yes, and I didn't mean to imply by that we need to do nothing until the rate study is done. I did write some notes while you were talking, as a matter of fact, and the notes to myself were that probably the best thing we could do in the short term would be to identify what hours we could cover by hiring 1 additional staff person. And then from that, figure out what those costs are and divide those costs and add it to the rate we are currently paying. While it wouldn't be a comprehensive look at whether our current rate structure is correct or not, it would give us a stepping stone to help address his immediate concern until such time we can address the larger issue.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Ms. Campbell?
I like that idea, and I'm sure that person, if they were there the whole time in the evenings, would only spend, an hour or two doing this, but they would be able to do other things as well. So I wouldn't want their whole salary to be dedicated to that figure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Woody?
Yeah, in fairness to Randy, I'm sure thoughts are going through his head pretty fast and furious. One person still takes vacation and sick leave and other odds and ends, and how many hours they can cover aren't necessarily the full 40 hours. So whether that turns out to in reality be two people, or whether one person only provides 4 hours per day with effective service, those are details we'll talk through.
Yeah. And there may be staggered shifts in the mix. There are many ways to address this, so yes, thank you. Okay, I see no more lights. So the next item before us is the presentations, and it's Recycle Star. And I've asked Mr. Perkins to pull out the winner. Oh dear. Number 20 is Roberta Muller. So we will advise her that she is our winner. Do you want to hear the other names on this list?
I would,
We have Willie Durant, Deborah Bowen, Debbie Bossum, Jackie Van Pelt, Barbara Murray, Cheryl Stone, Jennifer Pease, Alexis Dickey, Iris Ingram, George and Betty Bennett, Larry Rowe, Pamela and Bob Dewhurst, Sandra Crosby, Wendrell Lawrence, Kenneth Shaw, Jeff Hetty, Miss Andy Shutt and Larry Legg, Anthony MacArthur, Sylvia Sims, and Roberta Muller. So congratulations to all of them, and keep up the good work. Okay, the next item is the approval of the minutes of the board meeting of January 26, 2021. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes? Ms. Campbell?
first off, thank you for reading those names aloud. I was the one that asked for that last month. Also, at the same time that I asked for that last month, I was told that the winner of that Recycle Star goes on our website, but I went to the website yesterday and again this morning to make sure I was correct, and I couldn't find any names. I see where the names go. It says 2019, 2020, 2021, but there's no names on there. So maybe we could have somebody look at that.
And I think we now have a person in charge of our website.
Very
That
nice.
is somebody new, so, no.
So, and then I have a correction on
Yes.
the page 10. It said that I received that information from FDOT, when in fact I received that information from a, one of the county commissioner aides. I had not talked to FDOT. I said I plan to talk to FDOT.
Okay, thank you. Can we get those corrected?
With that correction, I will move the approval of the minutes.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Anyone? It's been seconded by Mr. Stevens. Please vote. What's the matter? No, they do that. Yeah, we're waiting for the voting thing.
Okay.
Apparently, we have technical difficulty. While they're doing that, I think we can raise our hands to vote on the minutes, if that's okay. Please vote. All in favor? Thank you. I don't think we need to wait for the computer. Okay, good. The next item is the consent agenda, and I will read these items, and then we can pull any of those that we wish to pull. Item A is adoption of General Resolution Number GR 2112, a general resolution authorizing the Executive Director authority to execute a utility services agreement for the Hearst Hammock Subdivision System Extension Project for water and sewer, and authorize the transfer of funds in the amount not to exceed $105,000 from CIP project number RS-121, lift station replacement and upgrade, to a newly created CIP project number for the Hearst Hammock Development Project. Item B, adoption of General Resolution Number GR 21-13, a general resolution authorizing the acceptance of bid from Talcon Group LLC for the Detroit Boulevard Lift Station Number 50 replacement project in the amount of $2,400,756 and authorizing the transfer of project funds. Item C, adoption of General Resolution Number GR 21-14, a general resolution authorizing the Executive Director to execute an interlocal agreement with the City of Pensacola for the reimbursement of a water main relocation project on Burgess Road, and authorize the transfer of project fund. And item D, adoption of General Resolution Number GR 21-15, a general resolution to the grinder pump reimbursement program relative to Inner-Rarity Island sewer system customers, authorizing the Executive Director to distribute funds per the Board's decision and authorizing a budget transfer of $120,000 from CIP Project CS-317 Sewer Expansion Program to CIP Project CS-318 Non-Gravity Sewer Connections. And I would like to pull item D. Does anyone else want to pull any of these items from the consent agenda? Ms. Campbell?
No, I'd like to move A through C for approval.
A through C, is there a second? Don't be shy. Ms.
Second.
Perkins? It's been moved and seconded. Are we back
Who
in
seconded?
business? Pardon me?
Who was the second?
Mr. Perkins.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we seem to be still having some electronic difficulties. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. And it passes unanimously. We come now to item D, and that is on page 82, if you want to turn to those pages. By the way, on item C, I learned more than I ever wanted to know about the engineering of sidewalks. You see how many pages? Okay, item 8D. Would you like to introduce this item, Mr. Woody, or would you like to have Mr. Hayden do that?
I'll give a few comments, but largely most of your information will be provided by Stacy Hayden, our Director of Engineering. This particular resolution comes to us from the Homeowners Association, who have requested and have been scouring all manner and means of ways to help reduce their costs, as you can easily understand why they would want to do so. This project is being funded by an MSBU, and but it is coming at some expense to the property owners for the overall improvements. Project's making good progress, and we are nearing the completion of those improvements, and look forward to having full ownership and operation of the facility. The resolution is presented to you in a form as requested by the Homeowners Association, which specifically is a request that you give an exception to a current program that, under normal circumstances, provides a $1,500 reimbursement to property owners who move from a existing septic tank system to a grinder pump system. There are a number of folks in this subdivision that are doing just that. However, there are many more that don't fit that definition of this particular policy, but the Homeowner Association are asking for this to be applied to them anyway. So based on concerns for how this particular project is different from other applications of the same policy, it is actually staff's recommendation, and my own as well, that the board not grant the the exception request and consider not passing this particular resolution. However, there's certainly room for lots of discussion. I'd ask Stacy to kind of give a background on the different situations going on and the reason why this one is definitely very unique. You'll find on your tables in front of you a colorized map of the area that will be helpful during Stacy's discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. And Mr. Hayden, before you start, could we get this on the table? Is anyone willing to make a motion one way or the other on this issue? Ms. Campbell, I see your light.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can we have a motion? Either for the staff recommendation or that we reject the staff recommendation. It's Vice Chair. Stephen's your Vice Chair. Will you take the chair?
I've got, oh, you can't see the light? I mean,
Oh, sorry, they just came on. Okay, good. Mr. Perkins.
I move that we deny the resolution and that we reimburse the 24 customers that are eligible for the current program.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay. Now, Mr. Hayden.
Well, I think Mr. Woody provided a pretty good background on the project. I believe all the board members, you have in front of you a map that's in color and identifies several different categories of customers in this area. The main customers that we are discussing are those that are highlighted in pink. Those are customers that switched from gravity sewer to low pressure as part of this project. And so they were essentially forced to have a grinder pump installed rather than obviously go with gravity sewer. And those are the customers that the HOA is requesting the $1,500 reimbursement for. I would like to note that there's for category 7 that you see on your map there, those areas that are highlighted in gray represent the 100 lots that are currently owned by the Escambia County. At the request of the HOA, those 100 lots are reserved for conservation purposes and are not anticipated to be sold off. The county does own other properties in the area, and those are designated in yellow, but those are a mixture of county-owned properties and private property owners. The other colors represent, the orange represents those customers that are on septic and have chosen to remain on septic, even though sewer is available as part of this project. Those customers may be eligible for the grinder pump reimbursement program in the future should they choose to abandon their septic tank and switch over to the low pressure sewer system. We do have, there were a few customers in the dark purple. They were already on a low pressure system, so they would not be eligible for this program at all. And then lastly, there are those in the blue that were on a gravity sewer system before this project, and they will remain on gravity sewer afterwards. Again, we've been trying to, recognizing that this is a significant financial burden for those residents that are out there, we've been looking at ways to maybe help them out. And because the system was private before, we had some concerns there with maybe the appearance of subsidizing development. And that's why we were very cautious in how we were able to approach this. That's where we are in a nutshell. Probably not the best of explanations, but I can certainly answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
I have a question. So on this map, and the gray area, they made a conservation area. What's the white in between the blue and the gray?
Waterway.
I believe that's a swampy area.
Yeah.
It's
what?
just, we don't have water bodies kind of designated there.
Wetlands or,
Wetlands, yes, sir.
Yeah.
okay.
So there are no more lights. I speak in favor of this resolution and in opposition to the motion. This is kind of a unique situation, and I appreciate the staff recommendation because of the policy setting aspect of it. This has been a long, tortuous process, and they, people bought property with sanitary sewer, a gravity system, and little did they know until afterwards that the owner of that system really had failed to maintain it. And this went into receivership. It was not a pretty process, but they have had to reach deeply in their pockets to fund this essentially sewer expansion. And they have done it entirely without any funds from ECUA. We've done the work, but we have not funded the project. When we do typical sewer expansions, we have some skin in the game. We pay part of that process, and there are some considerations for the homeowners if they tie in. In this case, these people have completely funded the process to come onto our system. And I would like to honor this request. It has cost us nothing, except if we do it, it costs us a precedent. So I would say that I would support the recommendation, what shall we call this? The resolution, but only as a one-time situation in support of a rather unique sewer expansion. Okay, I see no more lights. Ms. Campbell?
So I'm just going to ask two or three questions. So the cost of them if we don't do this is $13,700 per lot?
That number is an estimated number. At the moment, that hasn't been finalized. But
Okay,
that's a
so-
rough number.
okay.
Yes, ma'am, for those
Estimated.
170 customers that we're speaking about.
So I really am struggling with this one because, I'm going to take this off, because we did the same thing at Deerfield Estates. They paid $600,000 for a brand-new lift station. I just figured that one out, and that was $15,000 a person. We refused to help those people. We let them pay for their own because we didn't want to set a precedent. But now we want to set a precedent. And the only thing that bothers me about that is I'm sitting here looking at 100 lots that they could have sold and recouped $3,800,000. That's a lot of money. But they did not want to. They wanted to keep it as a conservation area in the middle of their island, and I get that. I mean, if you want it, that meant that much to them. And I have a friend that lives here, and she thinks I'm crazy. I should pay for the full sewer, and we have this fight every weekend while we play golf. And I said, but I didn't do it for the other guy. But I'm supposed to. How can I not do it for them, not do it for Creekwood, and then turn around and do it for Interarity? And allow Interarity to keep those lots and not sell them and pay for their own sewer. Now, if the developer had lived, he would have sold all 100 of those lots, and he probably would have had to put it into the sewer. Truth be known, or I don't know what he would have done with it, because somebody would, I'm surprised this went on and on and on and on with DEP, but I'm going to ask Mr. Stevens, because I don't know that much about lot prices, but you look at those lots in the middle of that, you own a development company, would it be about $40,000? I just figured on $30,000 a lot.
So closer to 50.
Okay, so I figured on $30,000 a
50,
lot,
60.
it would be $3,800,000. Now he's telling us it's $50,000 a lot, and I can do that math real quick too, and I think that would probably come close to paying. So I'm gonna do it real quick. Well, yeah, it would. It'd be more along the lines of $5 million. So for that reason and that alone, and I mean, please tell me if I'm wrong in my thinking. For that reason and that reason alone, I just can't. I'm willing to pay for the 24. That and I think they should get that relief. But for the others, that's a lot of money for us to pay or give. How much would we be giving them
For the 170 lots, it would be $255,000.
Okay, so are we willing to go back and offer that same kind of relief to Deerfield and Creekwood? And if we are, then I'll say yes. How much would it cost to go back to do it for Deerfield and Creekwood? I don't care if we give them money on their bill. I don't want to do it for, I don't want to say, I'm not going to do it for you, little guy that has 40 lots in a subdivision, but for this big old expensive island that has, private roads and private bridges that we've taken over already and I just don't want to make a difference in people. So I'm happy to do it if we go back and do the same thing for Creekwood and Deerfield.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Stevens?
So Chairwoman Benson, you had mentioned that they had and I am aware a little bit, I have some backstory on this inner-area island. They have an existing sewer system that's failed. And then Board Member Campbell, in Deerfield that you were referencing, I'm familiar with the subdivisions, did they have an existing sewer system in there or that
Yes,
failed
they
as well?
did, and it was
Okay. All right, so I'm just trying to see if we got apples to apples comparisons
Yeah, it was
here.
a
So-
developer, same thing,
same
developer
scenario, same
owned,
situation,
developer
'cause-
walked away,
Because it's,
In that one-
Chairwoman
in that
Benson
one-
makes a very compelling argument, so I'm going back and forth, but to your point, fair for the goose, fair for the gander. Okay, and like I said, that was my question, were those two, because my heart goes out, because I've had several people, residents there, come to me and reach out to me and send me emails in reference to the situation they're going through right now. My heart goes out to them, because I understand the situation due to no fault of their own, that this was, outside their scope of responsibility, and then now now because the system was put in inadequately, probably cutting corners or so by the previous contractor, that now the systems are failing and they're having to do this. But then at the same time, I understand the value of those lots. And I'm also very cognizant of the HOA out there, so that's.
Well,
Mr. Williams?
If I might continue,
I'm done. That was just asking those two questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
if I might just continue, just one, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, all you gotta do is sell 5 lots, and you got 255,000. So, I mean, just sell the 5 on the water right there. I don't know, I just hate to, because if I give them relief, then somebody else is gonna have to pay it. Like me. Well, I don't care, I would, but my people that don't have that much money.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Williams?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Generally, this is, 2 comments. Generally, this is a concern I have for homeowners who buy property. They aren't necessarily up to speed about their infrastructure for plumbing, and this may happen more times than not. So if there's any way possible where we as ECA body has the right to say yes or no to the type of plumbing, I would hope we would consider saying we want you to install plumbing that the buyer will not have to be concerned about in 10, 20 years from now. That would be my first concern, because that's a problem that I think could come up with many developers generally. But secondly, and particular to this property, I was hoping they would be here, because I wanted to know what was their thought as related to the conservation of the properties. I mean, if they were concerned about the cost of the upgrade to their plumbing, did they consider that when they voted to conserve these other parcels of land? And if so, then they considered the cost and considered that it was better to conserve than to be able to pay their bill. And I don't know if we should compensate them for that kind of consideration. So I wish the homeowners president or somebody had been here to represent them, so that was the one question I had going in. What was the thought? Did you consider the cost, and if so, made that determination, then okay, I understand, and that would be based upon how I would make my vote, and if they considered it, my vote is still no.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Campbell?
Mr. Williams, I just wanted to let Mr. Williams know, because he's new on the board, that this is sins of the past. It's not something a new developer's done. Our developers now have kind of given them self-guidance, and they changed the laws, I believe it was in 2017, that now on every single plat that goes out, it will tell the people what kind of sewer and septic and what have you. We can't tell them that they can't, that they have, what kind of sewer they have to have. I think only maybe the county or, health department could tell them they had to, but we would love everybody to be on sewer. But I have friends that have really good septic tanks, and they would cut my head off if I told them they had to put sewer in, so, we can't do that, but we have come a long way, and we no longer have developers building these type of subdivisions. We had 5 when I came on the board. This is the 3rd one that's being done, or 4th. There's only one left, right?
I believe it's 4th, yes.
It's a 4th. So there's only one left. So we're just paying for sins of the past. And thank you for those comments.
A couple of questions. These lots that are designated conservation district, number one, they would have sewer available to them if they chose to tie in. Is that correct or not?
So at the current moment, sewer is not available to those
Okay.
gray interior lots, and I don't believe so on the, easternmost lots next to the Russell Bayou or those areas in the blue.
Okay, so that would
So-
take another sewer expansion essentially. Do we have infrastructure that we could do that fairly easily?
Yes, ma'am. We could extend the current infrastructure over to those areas and pick them up,
Okay.
but that would be an additional cost.
Okay. So, and you might not know the answer, but you may, and the attorney may or may not. What's the difference between a conservation district and simply lots owned by a homeowners association that they want to keep off the market because they don't want to dump a lot of property on the market at the same time?
I know.
Okay?
So if you dedicate that as a conservation easement, you can't build on it.
Okay.
So I'm assuming their plan is to dedicate those as a conservation easement, correct? Have they done that yet?
Ma'am, I'm afraid I don't know how that agreement was written up between the HOA and the county, so I can't really
either.
speak to that. I apologize.
I don't either.
Okay, so obviously, it appears that what they've done is in the best interest of the environment, or else they wouldn't have, the homeowners association took a loss on this property by not selling it. So, and this is certainly an environmentally fragile area. And of course, it's in our best interest to get as many people as we can off of septic tanks. I'm kind of discouraged that some of the people are choosing not to tie into our system. Anyway, we have a priority and have continued to have a priority to have sewer expansion in areas near the waterways, and my gosh, this is certainly near the waterways. It's water all around. They didn't have a choice, and I support them and think this is a good investment. So I will not speak more about it, but thank you. Mr. Stevens.
Just 2 points to your question, Ms. Campbell, about was there the members of Inter-Arity's point to make this permanently a sanctuary, or having met with multiple members of the Inter-Arity HOA and multiple homeowners out there, they don't want any more growth, any more building, no one else on the island, no more houses. So I tend to believe that this was a unanimous, if not majority input from the owners of Inter-Arity to say, we don't want any more builders out here building on any more of these lots and that sort of thing, to that point. And then my point to you, Hayden, is as we're putting this expansion in here, there's some other areas that you alluded to that may or may not cover, and I'm all about like mobilization and infrastructure, so maybe we can future-proof this as we do it with the understanding that we may be expanding this system further into the future, and then whatever preparations or I don't know, additional, I don't know, piping we can put in or something to maybe forecast an expansion. So I guess just to clear the system that we're going to be improving here now, will it service all of these, every one of these lots into the future, or is there something we can do to facilitate that now while we've got the ground open and the equipment there and so forth, to where it would save us some money in the future when we do have to connect the rest of these lots?
Mr.
Yeah.
Hayden?
The sewer system that was installed will service all of those lots minus those that are in the gray that were reserved for conservation. If at any point that, there's some agreement between the county and the HOA that they want to develop those lots, that may be an option, then we would be able to extend the existing or the new sewer system over into those areas and pick them up. But that would be, we'd have to evaluate it at that time, but that sewer system should be able to pick up those lots without any problem.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
How much are they, so how many lots are we talking about with this, that they're asking for besides the 24?
Approximately 170 lots are that transition from gravity to low pressure.
And how much is that per lot that
They're asking for $1,500 per lot, which equates to roughly $255,000 total for those 170 lots.
and that's just a reduction in a fee, right? It wouldn't be, where would the 255,000 come from?
So, ma'am, currently we have some money in our budget that we typically provide that reimbursement to the regular customer that comes in and changing from septic to low pressure. We do have some money set aside in that budget. However, we would have to supplement that budget with another source, and we've identified that other source as being the sewer expansion program. I believe I'm requesting in the budget item or the agenda item here, it was $120,000. I believe we're requesting to transfer from sewer expansion to the non-gravity sewer connection budget item.
So that's where I start worrying about this, because I know I have a sewer expansion project where we're expanding sewer to someone that is on a septic tank, that is on the water, and I don't want to not be able to help them because I've gone out and done this. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Miramar. I have a project coming up on Miramar, and I don't want to, take away from someone trying to get off of septic, leaking into Perdita Bay, to help someone not on septic that's on just a different kind of system. The ones that are on septic we're helping, correct? The 24?
Correct.
There, okay. All right, thanks. I'm just trying, I'm really trying, because I know Ms. Benson wants to do this, and I'm really trying to find a way. But when I have to hurt somebody else to make it happen, that I just can't find it.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell, for your consideration. Okay, I see no more lights. Mr. Hayden, I think you've answered all the questions very well. Thanks for the work that you've put into this. It's been quite a long haul, and you've had to deal with lots of citizens out there in the process, so I appreciate you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll call for the vote. Just to be clear, the motion is to reject this exception to the grinder pump policy. Sometimes when you're voting a negative, I just want you to understand that.
But to do the 24. Okay.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, so please vote. And it passes 3-2. Thank you for a good discussion. The issues that come before us are not all black and white, and that's why we do this, so thank you for that. Okay, the next item is a budget report. Do we have anything to report today? You have your materials. Are we good? Anyone have any questions about the current budget report? Okay, if not, we will go to the executive director's report. Mr. Woody, you recognized.
I want to give you an update on a few things. As you'll remember, we discontinued our service in Santa Rosa County, and as a part of that change in operations, we brought equipment and resources back into Escambia County. One of those resources were the trash cans that were being used over in that county. You may remember that a large number of properties who are being served primarily in District 5 have older style cans that were in service at the time that the ECUA took over after a prior company was providing service in that area. So there are a multitude of blue colored cans from another provider in that area. Well, these last several weeks, we have been removing those older, faded, sometimes in poor condition cans with ones that we have recovered that are in good condition from their use in Santa Rosa County. We now are down to the point where we only have about 1,000 cans left to still pick up. That is a small minority of what we originally started out with. I appreciate Randy Rudd and his staff and the work they've been doing in that regard. When you look at the number of cans we have left over after that operation is complete, it looks like we'll probably have a good year and a half, maybe even 2 years supply of additional cans, which will help us going forward to be even more responsive to requests for replacement cans in the future in other locations. While we're still on the subject of sanitation, in the time since our last meeting, obviously we suffered a event over at the Godwin Lane and Pine Forest facility. While that cause is still under investigation, I'm not sure if it was electrical in nature or fuel in nature that caused the fire. We did lose one front loader, one roll-off truck, and 3 side loaders trucks were damaged. We have a good number of side loaders in reserve because of, again, stepping out of Santa Rosa County. We are, in the short term, renting 2 front loaders and 1 roll-off to help us during the short period of time between when this damage occurred and we receive our insurance proceeds so that we can purchase replacement vehicles for those 2. There were some peripheral damage of some others nearby, but those were just heat-related damage, and most of those vehicles are all back in service. My thanks to Randy and his staff for their quick response, as well as Jerry Piscopo and his staff, who also responded on that Sunday afternoon. One other update on the finance side, the finance department recently completed the 2020 comprehensive annual financial plan, and it is getting ready to be submitted for its state review. We got a very good review from our outside auditor, as we've had in past. I appreciate the work of Patty and Justin both in their staff in its preparation. Although we're only partway into the current year, it's already time to start looking at next year's FY22 budget. The operations budget we'll begin working on here shortly toward the end of March. Operating budgets, first draft, will be back into my office by the second week in April. and will continue for the then succeeding month and a half. CIP projects are currently under process by staff, and Stacy and Don and his staff are currently going through a review of capital improvement projects now as we speak. So that's going on in the background. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Woody? Ms. Campbell?
Do we know where we are with Mr. Sapp on his?
He's a property owner nearby the Godwin facility that faces on Pine Forest. We have had him in touch with, and we had our adjuster from FMIT visit him. I don't have a report back from them
Oh,
yet.
okay. This guy's like right next door. And he sent me some videos during that thing. But he's really been helpful, you know, a good neighbor. So I just want to make sure we take care of it.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, and kudos to the people who cleaned. It's a mess cleaning up after a fire. It's a lot of work, and so I know that was, that was arduous and probably required some overtime and stuff, and good job on that. On the replacement cans in the northern part of the county, I looked at North Escambia online, and I just noticed there were a lot of negative comments that, well, they're taking our blue cans and it's a waste of money putting these other cans in there and everything. And I don't know if we can meet with the editor up there or do anything public relations wise, or if it's even worth it to let people know and they may just have found it out now that they're getting nice new cans, that we didn't go out and buy these cans just to do this. We had them in stock from the Santa Rosa thing or anything. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know, I'm open to suggestion. There may be nothing we can do, but I'd like to, to try and ease those concerns for the people and let them know that it's actually going to work out pretty good for them. There's probably nothing we can do, but I don't know. Do we have a relationship with the person up there with that paper? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Woody?
Yeah, most of that information was presented in press releases. It doesn't always get reported in its entirety. I will add to the comments you've already made by saying that those blue cans that are being recovered are 12 to 15 years of age, and their condition is kind of questionable. But those that are being recovered are being salvaged. They're being baled and run through our recycling facility, and because they're all made of HDPE plastic, so they are being recycled.
And one other thing that I'm really encouraged about is that we have about a 2,000 can reserve, but because forever we had real problems and delays with getting replacement cans for people. So it's nice to have those to have a reserve and to be able to just get it out there quickly and then work on it, rather than having a shortage and having a vendor, spend 4 or 5 weeks, when a person needs a replacement can. So hopefully I haven't heard much about that problem recently, so hopefully it's being taken care of. But it's nice to have those cans in reserve.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. The next is our attorney's report. Mr. Beasley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no report at this time.
Okay, we come to unfinished business. I have none. New business, I have 13A. I just would like to put everyone on notice that we need to do the executive director and the attorney's evaluation. So if we could have Kim and HR provide forms for us so that we can begin looking over them and be prepared to, I think probably a May date to have those in would be good. That would be the anniversary of Mr. Woody coming here, and close to Mr. Beasley's anniversary. Just be thinking about your evaluation of these two. We come now to board communications, and I have one. We were doing the plaque for Mr. Tweedy. Mr. Woody, when do you think that plaque will be ready?
We already have the language done and approved. I believe it's actually at the vendor now being prepared. We had proposed it for your next board meeting, subject to confirmation by the Tweedy family that is a convenient date for them.
So I think it would be appropriate to do it at a CAC meeting, since he was part of the
CAC, okay.
CAC, if we could do that. And so if you could just alert us to the date. had a nice email from Mrs. Tweedy, and it was just lovely. She was so touched that this board would want to take action like that for her husband. And she said she doesn't know if she's ready to come, but of course she would want to be here. She says every time his name is mentioned, she is a blubbering idiot. And I thought, I hope that when my day comes, there's a blubbering idiot left behind, that I would have made that impact. But she was quite lovely and quite grateful for what this board did. Okay, we come now to the second open
I
forum.
have one communication.
I'm sorry, Ms. Campbell. and
That's
there's
okay,
Mr.
but speaking
Perkins.
of blubbering idiots, somebody was dumb enough to marry me almost 30 years ago, and I believe this might be the first time he's ever walked in the boardroom, my husband Mike. Never
Smart
been to my
man.
board meeting, but I told him, it's getting close to the end, you better come see me one time.
That's great, welcome. Mr. Perkins.
And, yeah, I'd also probably qualify, if I'm fortunate enough to outlive you, to be a blubbering idiot when you go to. So I really think a lot of you. One thing I just wanted to say that I'm encouraged by, we always used to do an annual evaluation of the attorney and of the executive director. And then for a few years, for like 5 or 6 years, I don't know why, but that just disappeared. We just stopped doing it. So I'm glad we're getting back into that because it gives them valuable feedback. And if there are areas they need to improve in, it lets them know that. And if there are areas that we think are particularly useful, it lets them know that. And so that guidance is critical. But what I'm even more hopeful about is us doing a customer survey on many aspects of our operation and getting a baseline from people, whether it's good or bad.
Right.
We need to know, and we need to know the areas that we need to improve. And it's something we should have done long ago, quite frankly. So I'm appreciative of the staff effort on that, and I really look forward to getting the results, no matter how good or bad
Sure.
they may be, and to seeing where we need to improve and to working hard to make those improvements happen.
I think we brought that up during the budget process last year, and I'm glad staff is following up on that, and I think it is very good information, so thank you for that. Mr. Williams?
Yes, I'm just unclear. So we do have a customer survey in progress?
It's in
this
progress.
time?
Mr. Woody, if you wanted to address that.
Yes, at this time, we're just beginning work on the drafting the actual instrument itself, the questions that we're going to fashion and being done in such a way that we can maximize the amount of good information that we can be provided. One important thing that I'd like to mention about this survey, we're conducting it in a way that makes the results statistically significant. So it's not a popularity contest. It's not something you can call in or do online at will. We'll be reaching out, our vendor will be reaching out to our customer base in a way that is scattered and random, and therefore we have confidence within a certain margin of error on the accuracy of the result we get. My intention of that is so that we can make good management and policy decisions off of it with some confidence.
Yeah, I think a true benchmark survey with crosstabs that really gives you information on all aspects of that makes absolute sense. Mr. Williams?
And if I could follow up, lastly, is it going to be annual or semi-annual or biannually?
Expensive.
I would suggest that we do it every 2 years. It takes a little bit of time when you make a change for that change to be noticeable. And we want to be reasonable with the expenses as well. And some of those questions will change a little bit between visits, but there's a certain core number of questions you'll want to ask every time so that you, number one, establish a baseline, and number two, you can have trends to determine whether you're improving on whatever your target area is.
Ms. Campbell?
And I wanted to shout out to staff for a good PR job thus far with the Recycle Coach. I've seen it on the television and saw it in I'm not one to read my little thing every single month, but I read it this month and it was in there and it was pretty nice to see that and just, I think we're coming a long way on that recycling.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Okay, I see no more lights. We come now to the second open forum. I have no pink slips. So unless anyone has anything else, we are adjourned.